Hi everybody. Today we're going to talk about types of government, and we're going to start with a bit of a discussion about democracies or about different types of democracies. A second part of this mini lecture I'll post also, and that will deal with non-democratic regimes. So we're starting with a discussion about democratic governments or democratic regimes. And this is, aside from the mechanics of how those governments work, we also need to remember that it is kind of a given that we believe democracy is a good form of government and probably even the best form of government. Right? One thing that you need to remember is that at its pure form, democracy is people making the decisions, government by the people and for the people, right? And the idea behind it is that if it works well, we give power to more people, to more eligible people in the decision-making process. And that arguably is a good thing. But let's pause it right here. And I want to know what you think. So stop what you're doing right now and take a piece of paper and try to answer this question. Is that a good idea? That people will be involved in the decision-making process of government and that more people will have more power. Do you think it's a good idea? Write down whatever comes to mind and keep that piece of paper for our Zoom session on Wednesday, because we're going to work with that. As we move forward, we can look about the origin of the work. The whole idea of democracy is being traced back to ancient Greece. And in the Greek language, democracy can be broken, or it comes from a combination of two words. Demos, which means the citizens of the city-state, and kratos, which means power or rule, right? So democracy, loosely translated, is the rule of the people or power to the people. And often, and I'm sure you heard about that, we look at Athens as the model of democracy. But we need to keep in mind a few things. Number one, Athens was not a country with 60 or 100 or 300 million people or 1 billion people. Instead, it was a city-state, so smaller in size and in population. We're talking about a population of, give or take, and depending exactly at what time, about 300,000 people. Now, also, if you look up, the word demos doesn't mean people, it means citizens. And citizens in Athens were only free men. Okay? Now, this is a city-state that about 2/3 of its populations were slaves, so not citizens. And then take out the children and take out the females and take out the non-citizens or non-residents that were just coming through. And so we're ending up with a relatively very small group of citizens that were even eligible. And even under that model of democracy, that very first experiment with the concept or with this type of government, we still see some forms of indirect representations. If you take a class about comparative government, you'll go much more in depth into exactly how the democracy in Athens worked. But it was more similar to models of direct democracy. This idea that we actually give people the power to make policy. So you need to solve a problem, build a school, build erode, we going to a war or not? Let's put the question out to the people will decide. And we do have some form of that direct democracy that are still at play today. In about 50 countries around the world, and in more than half of the states in the United States, we see some forms of direct democracy. The first type of that are initiatives. If you ever heard about those are the type of decisions that people make direct. People provide direct ideas, citizens provide direct ideas for policy and different laws. And so this is very much so that if you woke up in the morning with a good idea for a policy or a law, you can go and collect enough signatures, get some other citizens to support you, and that idea can go on the ballot. If it passes in the next elections, it becomes law. Okay? And we see initiatives that deal with diverse issues. There are many of them in US states that are using them. Many times you will see them on the ballot when you come to vote. But there are some there are some benefits. For example, this is supposedly a very efficient way. You put an idea, a proposal on the ballot, and there is a clear up and down vote, yes or no. It's very efficient. Otherwise, the legislative process that we see in a lot of governments is long, and it takes time, it takes debate, it takes research, and all of those things. Here, once again, there is a proposal, and it goes to a clear vote, up and down vote. So arguably, this is efficient. But there are some issues. People tend to want things that may conflict with each other. For example, we want better schools, we want smaller classrooms and newer buildings, but we also want to pay less taxes. So you could see in consecutive years, or sometimes in the same year, two initiative proposals, one that support reducing class sizes, and at the same time a proposal that cut taxes. And so, and both of those might pass, and then the government has to find a way to implement all of those. And so by losing this process, the longer process of legislation, we are losing the how to balance those conflicting interests. The other problem is, of course, as you can see, you need enough signatures, and those are usually a lot of signatures. And then usually you want some kind of a campaign to get people to vote your proposal. And that means money. So once again, there is a money screen or a money block that would keep some people out of this game. The other form of direct democracy are referenda. And this is where the legislator or the government bring a decision to the public. Many times these are big items. So when the UK wanted, the leadership in the UK wanted to exit the European Union, what we know as Brexit, they brought it to a referenda of the population. So something like that, basically the government saying, we really need to see what the people think about that. And so you build some kind of a referenda on a decision. Some referendums can also come bottom up from the people when they try to challenge a new law. So if the government legislated a new law, some systems allow for citizens to get together, organize, and say, this is a bad idea, let's put it for a referenda, let's put it on the ballot. Now, a referenda, if passes, provides the government or whoever initiated it with an approval stamp of legitimacy from the public. Now, while we do have some forms of direct democracy, most of the democratic countries are some sort of a republic, right? And a republic, like we are in the United States, a republic is some sort of a compromise between direct democracy, but it is designed to mitigate the risks that come with, those conflicting ideas that we need to spend more money and cut taxes, for example, or if there is a movement to act against a specific group or specific minority that can be very popular, but still the government, a representative government in a republic can mitigate that, right? So in this case, the citizens vote to elect representatives who are then left with the job to make the decision. This is the type of government that we have here in the United States. Now, there are different forms of democracies, of republic-style democracies, but in general, the idea is to put a check on the people and make sure that we're not ending up with a mob rule, right? And you see that again and again and again in Western Europe, in the United States, in Canada, in other places where we have newly built democracies. They are all some type of republics, right? Now, this process of checks, we call it checks and balances between the people and the government and people and decision-making and the different branches of government is by design makes decision-making slow, right? So a lot of times we look at the government and we say, why don't they act? Why don't they do something? Why does it take them so much time? Part of the answer it is by design, okay? And the design is to make sure that the process takes time so we can learn the issue, learn the different problems, try to find the compromise and build some kind of a coalition or more support to that piece of legislation. And the result, arguably, or at least in theory, is a well thought of policy that enjoys a lot of support. So this is, at least in theory, the type of government that we are living under, and other or most other people in the world that live in democracies live under some type of a republic. Now, there are, like I said, different types of democracies, and we will talk about a little bit more about that in the next mini lecture. And also, I will give you a bit of more information about non-democratic countries. I'll see you next time we meet.